True, creepy insect stories that will haunt your dreams. Prepare to be spooked with these chilling insect horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. This is Mr. H with Masked Horror. Get ready to have your skin crawling with the most spine-chilling insect tales that will keep you up at night. The Kernel of Fear, David. It was the night I had been waiting for, the release of the new Avengers movie. My friends and I had been talking about it for weeks. As usual, I got a large popcorn with extra butter and salt. The movie was everything I had hoped for, and I went to bed that night replaying the epic scenes in my head, eager to see it again as soon as possible. The next morning, I woke up with an odd sensation behind my teeth. It felt like a popcorn kernel, a common occurrence after a night at the movies. I poked at it with my tongue throughout the day, but it wouldn't budge. The feeling nagged at me, making it hard to concentrate in class. By the time I got home, I was desperate to get rid of it. I rushed to the bathroom, grabbed some floss, and carefully worked it between my teeth. As I pulled, I felt something dislodge. Relief washed over me, but that relief quickly turned to horror. Instead of a popcorn kernel, I was holding a tiny, slightly crushed baby cockroach. My mind raced. How had it gotten there? The thought of a cockroach being inside my mouth all day made my skin crawl. I had no idea where it had come from or how it had gotten into my mouth. I ran to the sink, rinsing my mouth over and over, but the feeling of disgust lingered. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every little itch or tickle made me jump, imagining more insects crawling on me. I did some research online, trying to understand how this could have happened. I found articles about infestations in food production facilities and stories of people finding bugs in their popcorn at movie theaters. The idea that I could have eaten more without knowing made me sick. The next day, I told my friends about the incident. They were as horrified as I was, but none of us had any answers. Over the next few days, the fear of finding more cockroaches consumed me. I started to notice tiny bites on my skin and began to suspect that there might be more of them in my house. I checked everywhere, but found nothing. Then one night, I woke up feeling something crawling on my face. I slapped at it and turned on the light, only to find another baby cockroach on my pillow. I realized then that the problem wasn't just with the popcorn. It was in my room, in my bed. I tore apart my room, searching for the nest. When I moved my mattress, I found a small hole in the wall, and inside, a huge mass of baby cockroaches. The sight was nauseating. My parents called an exterminator immediately. He came the next day and confirmed our worst nightmares. A cockroach infestation had taken hold in the walls of our house. They must have been spreading for weeks, maybe months, without us knowing. Despite the exterminator's efforts, the psychological damage was done. Every night, I lay in bed, unable to shake the feeling of tiny legs crawling over me. I started having nightmares about being eaten alive by swarms of insects. My grades slipped, and I avoided my friends, too ashamed to tell them how bad it had gotten. I had to go to therapy, and everything eventually got better with cognitive behavioral therapy. But I still can't eat popcorn ever again. Every time I get near popcorn, I feel the slightest itch, and I'm transported back to that moment in the bathroom, staring at the tiny cockroach in the sink. The sting of fear. Frank. I'll never forget that afternoon. It was a hot summer day, and I was practicing on my backyard basketball court, pushing myself harder than ever. I was determined to land a college scholarship, and nothing could stand in my way. or so I thought. I'd been shooting hoops for hours, the rhythmic sound of the ball hitting the pavement a comfort to me. I went up for a perfect shot, the ball arcing beautifully towards the hoop. But as it swished through the net, I heard a strange buzzing sound, and I saw a wasp fly by me. I'm not a fan of insects, but they are often outside in the summertime. There's nothing I could do about that. I shrugged it off and kept playing, lost in the game. A few minutes later, I felt a sharp, burning pain on my chest. I looked down and saw 3 wasps flying and crawling under my shirt. Panic set in, and they stung me repeatedly. The pain was intense, like nothing I'd ever felt before. My chest felt like it was on fire, and I started to feel dizzy. I screamed for help, but my voice seemed far away. I collapsed on the court, my vision blurring. The last thing I remember before blacking out was my mom's frantic face as she ran towards me. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, hooked up to the machines. The doctor told me I had a severe allergic reaction to the stings from the wasps. If my mom hadn't found me when she did, I might not have made it. I recovered physically, but the incident left deep scars. I couldn't shake the fear of wasps, especially around basketball hoops. Every time I saw an outdoor court, my chest tightened, and I felt a phantom pain where I'd been stung. Despite this, I managed to secure a spot on a collegiate basketball team. I told myself I was fine, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. My fear became an obsession. I couldn't play on outdoor courts, but I started to have recurring nightmares about wasps swarming me, stinging me until I couldn't breathe. My performance on the court suffered during some games, and my play became inconsistent, especially if I didn't get a great night's sleep due to the nightmares. I remember one particular dream that took a darker turn than normal. I dreamt I was back on my backyard court, practicing alone, the buzzing sound starting again, louder this time. I looked up and saw wasps pouring out of the hoop, hundreds of them. They swarmed me, their stingers piercing my skin. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. The fear was consuming me. My college career suffered immensely. The potential and aspirations I had of playing overseas were diminished, all because of my constant phobia. The dream of playing the sport I loved while making a living doing so slipped through my fingers like sand. My teammates couldn't understand why someone with so much promise was failing to perform. Coaches were baffled by my sudden drop in form. Opportunities that once seemed within reach became distant memories. I lived my life in the shadow of what could have been, haunted by that fateful day. My dreams were stung to death by the relentless phobia, leaving me to wonder what might have been if I had never taken that final shot. The horror of my past forever overshadowed my present. It was as if the wasps had taken residence not just in that hoop, but in my mind, forever tainting the game I once loved. The Nest of Nightmares, Mary. When I was 7, my golden retriever Max loved to jump into piles of leaves. He'd bounce into them with such joy that I couldn't help but laugh and join in. One crisp autumn afternoon, we had an especially large pile in the backyard. Max dove in headfirst, his tail wagging furiously. I followed, thinking it would be the best day ever. It probably would have been fun if there hadn't been a spider's nest and eggs in it. As soon as I landed, I felt an odd tickling sensation all over my body. I stood up, brushing off the leaves, and saw Max covered in tiny spiders, crawling through his long golden coat. My heart raced as I realized that I, too, was covered in them. They were in my hair, on my clothes, and even creeping up my arms. I screamed, running out of the pile and frantically brushing off the spiders. My parents heard my cries and rushed outside. They helped get the spiders off me and Max, but the damage was done. The image of those tiny, crawling creatures seared into my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep, feeling phantom spiders crawling all over me. From that day forward, I developed an intense fear of spiders. Fast forward years later, I'm now in my 20s, and the fear has only grown worse. Even the smallest spider sends me into a panic. I've tried therapy, medications, and exposure techniques, but nothing works. The memory of that day in the leaves haunts me. Last Thanksgiving, my parents held Thanksgiving at their house, the first time in a long time. We usually go to my aunt's or uncle's house, but this year my mom wanted to do it. I haven't really visited my parents and my childhood home since graduating college. The backyard hadn't changed much, and the sight of the leaves brought back memories. I tried to avoid thinking about it, but the fear lingered in the back of my mind. One night, I heard scratching sounds coming from the attic. At first, I thought it was mice, but the sounds were too irregular. My brother and I decided to investigate, grabbing a flashlight and cautiously climbing the stairs. The attic was dusty and filled with old boxes and forgotten memories. As I moved the flashlight around, the beam caught something that made my blood run cold. A massive spider nest, with hundreds of tiny spiders crawling out of it. My mind flashed back to that day years ago with Max. I stumbled backwards, tripping over a box and falling hard onto the wooden floor. The spiders were everywhere, spreading across the attic. My skin crawled as I felt the familiar sensation of tiny legs scurrying over me. Desperate to escape, I scrambled to my feet and ran downstairs. I locked myself in the bathroom, hyperventilating. My reflection in the mirror showed the terror in my eyes. I stayed there for what felt like hours, too afraid to move. That night, I called an exterminator, and they said they would arrive the next morning. They came and assured me the problem would be taken care of. For a few days, I felt a sense of relief, but the fear never truly went away. Every creak, every shadow, every small movement in the corner of my eye sent me into a state of panic. Let's just say, every time I visit my parents, they know I will be staying at a hotel, or they have to get the entire home exterminated before I visit.